Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. In this video, we are going to be going over the police reports for the Chad Doerman case. Our first page is going to be our offense report. This took place on 6/15/2023 at 4 p.m. Location 1965 Laurel Lindale Road, New Richmond, Ohio. Narrative aggravated murder, and then it lists a total victims of 3. The first 2 reports we read are going to be from the 2 deputies that arrived on scene first. Those are the 2 of the body cam footage that you have seen floating around. The offense report date and time is 6/15 at 5:56 p.m. I was dispatched to 1965 Laurel Lindale for a 911 open line. They have that redacted. I activated my lights and sirens at this time and responded from State Route 125 at Mount Holly. While responding to the scene, dispatch was giving updates. And if you'd like to hear that full dispatch audio, I have that posted as well. They advised that someone was actively shooting at the firehouse. Dispatch stated that the active shooter was a male, white, wearing green shirt and wearing blue jeans. They advised that the male was sitting on the porch of 1965 Laurel Lindale. Dispatch then advised that several small children have been shot and were laying in the front yard. Deputy Sparks and I arrived at the same time, 16:26 hours, and we could observe the male sitting on the porch of the residence. We started to give the male verbal commands to stand up and show us his hands. Deputy Sparks and I tried to move down to the driveway to take a better advantage point. We decided to move back up to the cruisers and respond up to the residence. While responding up to the residence, we were giving the male verbal commands. When we reached the male, I kept cover and Deputy Sparks went hands-on. We detained the male, Chad Doerman, and advised EMS to respond to the scene. After detaining the male, I stayed with him until Deputy Rudd arrived on scene. I advised Deputy Rudd to secure the male in a patrol car. After Deputy Rudd took the male, I responded to the front yard of the residence where, redacted, was giving blank children medical attention. Blank 2 of the children and Deputy Sparks picked up one of the children and ran towards EMS. I remained blank and assisted with medical attention with one of the children. Deputy Sparks and I noticed that blank, which I believe that's their mother, had a gunshot wound to the left thumb. We advised EMS and assisted her to the squad. I collected information from blank in the back of the squad, reference her children. I remained on scene until detectives arrived on scene. Deputy Popham, number 1105. Now this is the other report. On June 15th, 2023 at 16:16 hours, I responded in 1965 Laurel Lindale Road, Monroe Township, Claremont County for a 911 open line. CAD notes advised that there was an open line and they've redacted that. While en route, dispatchers continued to give updates with multiple callers advising that there was an active shooter. The shooter was described as a white male wearing a green shirt and blue jeans. I arrived on scene with Deputy Popham at 16:26 hours and deployed my patrol rifle. I observed the male seated on the porch and could hear a female screaming. I began giving the male verbal commands to stand up and walk towards me. I was updated by dispatch that the shooter was named Chad Doerman. At this time, I could see what I believed to be a brown long rifle next to the shooter's left hand. Due to the need to assess the injuries to the victims, we began to approach Chad and continued giving him verbal commands to stand up. Chad continued to ignore commands and remain seated. After passing a camper in the front yard, I was able to observe 3 bodies of juvenile boys laying in the front yard. I continued to approach the shooter and asked Deputy Popham to hold cover for me while I attempted to grab the shooter. I grabbed Chad by the left arm and placed him onto the ground. I secured his hands while Deputy Popham placed the handcuffs on. After Chad was in custody, I ran blank and the 3 juveniles to assess injuries. I informed dispatch that the shooter was in custody and to send EMS for 3 children with gunshot wounds. In an attempt to get the kids to the medic sooner, I grabbed one and ran towards the roadway. EMS began to arrive on scene. I sat the juvenile down on the ground and began to perform CPR until EMS took over my position. I secured my rifle in my patrol vehicle and went back to gather information. I went back to the scene, redacted, to the life squad for a gunshot wound to her left thumb. I made contact with blank, who said that she was the sister of the victims. I obtained her information and provided it to Sergeant Feelhauer. I remained on scene for the scene security until detectives arrived on scene. Deputy S. Sparks, number 12914. Here we have our third deputy's report, and all of the text that you see here in capital letters is actually audio or things that were being said during the dispatch call. So again, I do have that full audio posted if you would like to listen to that. After that, at the bottom, we have, upon arrival at 16:30 hours, EMS was arriving on scene and checking patient status with Deputy Popham and Deputy Sparks. I began taping off the scene with crime scene tape. After completing taping off the backyard, I responded to the driveway and began a personal log of all EMS, officers, deputies, and detectives on scene. I stayed in the driveway of the residence and maintained the personal log until I was relieved by Deputy Martin at 18:49 hours. Deputy Martin maintained personal log. I responded to the Claremont County Sheriff's Office to add personnel and narrative. And this is Deputy Daimling Petite. This is our next report on June 15th, 2023 at 16:16. The Claremont County Communications Center dispatched several Sheriff's Office units to 1965 Laurel Lindale Road for a report of an active shooter in progress. While on the way to the scene, we were getting updates that the shooter was on the front porch of the house shooting people. While still en route, units on scene broadcast via radio that they were able to take the suspect into custody without incident. I arrived on scene around 16:30 hours with Deputy Daimling. The scene was already very active with police and EMS units. I observed Deputy Sparks standing by a young child, victim 1, by the front of the house, who was being treated by Monroe EMS. There was also a hysterical female kneeling by the child who was identified as Blank, the child's mother. I was later informed that Blank also suffered a gunshot wound to her hand. Deputy Sparks confirmed with me that the shooter, Chad Doerman, was in custody and was secured in Deputy Rudd's vehicle, and that Deputy Rudd was with him. I asked where the other victims were, and they pointed towards the front of the yard near the driveway and street. I saw one EMS member performing chest compressions on a small boy, victim 2, who appeared to be around 3 or 4 years old. I went over to help with medical care, and the EMS member stopped CPR and said that the child was deceased. After a closer look, it was obvious he was deceased from a gunshot wound to the left side of his head. I covered the child with a sheet provided by EMS. I was informed that a third child, victim 3, was in the back of the ambulance being treated for a gunshot wound. I was notified shortly after this that he died also. The scene was taped off, roads were shut down by responding agencies, and Deputy Daimling started a personal log. And this report was Ryan Feilhauer's. On 6/15/2023 at 16:33 hours, I responded to 1965 Laurel Lindale for a reported shooting. Prior to leaving my residence, I confirmed with CPL Scott this incident was being handled by our agency. Upon arrival at 16:55, I made contact with CPL Scott and Sergeant Crouch. They provided an overview of the incident. Sergeant Feilhauer had me established with deputies that were on scene in their perimeter locations. I was instructed and began a canvass in the area. Myself and Deputy Hawkins began to canvass on Laurel Lindale. I remained on scene until 21:45 hours. Prior to leaving the scene, I assigned Deputy Martin to provide scene security throughout the night and maintain the personal log. On 15 June 2023 at 16:16 hours, deputies were dispatched to 1965 Laurel Lindale for reports of an active shooter. Calls to 911 were advising that a subject was shooting his family and that there were dead children in the yard. I responded from State Route 276 in Mathis Road in Williamsburg Township. At 16:39, I arrived on the scene. There were already units on the scene and 2 juvenile victims were in the yard deceased. The third victim was in an ambulance at the scene, and the wife/mother. Blank was being treated for a gunshot wound in another squad, and her oldest child was in there with her. I briefly spoke to Sergeant Feilhauer, and we were cleared the residence looking for additional victims. No one else was located, and according to reports from the mother of the victims, we were certain that her children had been accounted for, and there was not anyone else needing medical care. I especially wanted to include this police report because I have seen rumors that the reason this whole thing happened was because the mother and her sister were at their home and that they were packing because she was going to take the boys and leave. However, this police report here tells us that there was no one else there other than mother, Chad, stepdaughter, and 3 sons. The scene was secured and we began blocking the road with vehicles and caution tape. We began canvass of the area for witnesses and security cameras. Several witnesses were located and the statements obtained. I just continued to manage the scene and relay information to the command staff. CPL Scott. Now this one is an investigation note. June 15th at 4:49 p.m., they arrived on scene. Contact made with Patrol Supervisor CPL Scott. Briefed as to 3 confirmed deceased juveniles. 1 laying in the side yard near the porch stoop, 1 laying in the side yard near the driveway entrance, and the last in the Monroe Township Fire EMS Life Squad. Patrol had established a secured scene having the outer perimeter marked with crime scene tape with deputies posted in the primary perimeter with the same. Contact made with Investigation Supervisor Sergeant Crouch informs me the mother of the 3 deceased juveniles has suffered an apparent GSW to the left hand and is an additional life squad, awaiting ground transport to UC Hospital. Sergeant Crouch requests I attempt to speak with the mother, blank, who was also apparently accompanied by her 14-year-old stepdaughter, blank, who reportedly was the only victim not harmed. Alright, so that about covers it for our police reports. Now, this is another document that was filed. This is a victim's rights request form. And this was filed on June 22nd. And it says, at the time, I wish to exercise the rights affirmatively requested below. Those rights not requested are waived. I understand that I can change my mind at any time. If I change my mind, I understand that I must call, email, or complete a new form and return it to the investigating officer, prosecutor, court, prison, jail, or community, I can't see what that word is, corrections facility. To ensure that officials have updated information on rights, I wish to exercise and update contact information, and I am to receive a copy of the form. So we have form use, initial contact, date June 20, 2023, the report number, Claremont County, badge number, arraignment, and the Common Pleas Court. Now, this says automatic rights. You do not need to request these rights. The right to be informed of your rights, the right to be treated with fairness and respect for your safety, dignity, and privacy, right to reasonable protection from the accused or any person acting on behalf of the accused, right to information about the status of the case, right to refuse a defense interview, deposition, or other discovery request, the right to object to defense requests for access to your confidential information, including medical, counseling, school, or employment records, access to your personal devices or online accounts or other personal information, right to be present at all public proceedings, the right to have a support person with you during proceedings, right to confer with prosecutor at certain points in the case, including before pretrial diversion is granted, before the prosecutor amends or dismisses an indictment, information, or complaint, before the prosecutor agrees to a negotiated plea, and before a trial. The right to tell the court your opinion in public proceedings involving release, plea, sentencing, disposition, parole, and any other hearing that involves victims' rights. The right to object to unreasonable delays, and the right to full and timely restitution from the offender. And then at the bottom we have rights that must be requested. Check the boxes below if you want to exercise these rights. I want my name and identifying information to be redacted and removed from public records. I want notice of the arrest, escape, or release of the offender. I want reasonable and timely notice of all public proceedings. I want to confer with the prosecutor in the case in addition to the times listed above. I want to be notified of subpoenas, motions, or other requests to access any of my personal information. So all of those boxes are checked off, and one would assume that this is for the boy's mother. Now, if you haven't already seen it, I did upload the new body cam footage that we just received yesterday that is of Chad being booked into the jail. Now, I know some people were upset that they did bleep some of the information out, but they also send us a document telling us things that they have redacted and why they have redacted it. So under our booking history for that video, it says personal identifiers. So that segment where they are booking Chad in and it appears like they're talking, but you can't hear him. He's just giving them his personal information, and that's why they have that part redacted. I have also included in the comment section of that video timestamps, so you can fast forward, speed through, whatever you want to do to where they are actually talking in the important parts of the video. Alright guys, that's all I have as far as the police reports and a couple court filings. They did also include the 911 calls, which I have posted in a separate video. If you made it to the end of the video, thank you so much for being here. Please do me a favor, like, comment, share, subscribe, and turn on your bell icon to get notifications for when I post.